Elegoo's recently announced and then subsequently released two brand new resin 3D printers. That's to say the Saturn IV and the Saturn IV Ultra. Now those two printers carry a lot of technology between them, but there's only a $100 price difference between the two. While everybody else is focused on the Ultra, I figured we'd take a closer look at the base model. I'm Ron Burke, editor-in-chief for Gamingtrend.com. Let's unbox this thing and print some stuff. Now I'm excited to talk about the new stuff, but let's go over what else is in the box. Obviously you have the manual, which goes over how to set everything up. We'll get back to that. Inside the box you have a power line, which is going to be based on your country, whether you're in Canada, EU, UK, whatever. And this will go with the power brick that's inside the toolbox. Also inside the toolbox, if you've heard any of my other reviews, you know how this is going to go. Throw these in the garbage. Get yourself a real respirator. Here's some gloves. These are actually useful. Keep those. Imagine yourself trying to pour resin while holding this thing steady. Throw those in the garbage and get yourself a funnel. I like this scraper, but don't ever use it inside this printer. So this is useful for getting things off the plate, but otherwise, yeah, just be mindful where you use it. This, on the other hand, I have found no use for this whatsoever. Get yourself a little Rubbermaid one. You don't ever want to possibly gouge your FEP. This will definitely do that. I know it's plastic, but rubber would be much better. I highly encourage you to throw this in the trash and buy yourself a nice Rubbermaid one. There's also a set of screws here. These screws are going to be, if you ever need to take apart the system itself, like maybe to change the screen. I know it's going to make some folks uncomfortable, but the screen is a consumable. At some point, you will need to change it. Well, Elegoo's been nice enough to include a variety of screws for you to do exactly that, as well as some Allen wrenches, which is going to fit every one of the keys that you have to be able to open everything up. Last but not least, we have a USB thumb drive. These don't have to be super expensive thumb drives. The ones that are included have worked just fine for me. Your mileage may vary. You may want to upgrade to something better, but realize that print files aren't necessarily huge, so you don't have to go out and get a really big thumb drive for that. This is really just for patching the firmware and also for loading files, which, I mean, stuff that I've printed this big, or maybe 2 gigs, so don't stress on it if this is not a really big drive. Then the final piece. Now this print plate has a lot in common with some more recent printers. More specifically, the Saturn III Ultra and also the Jupiter LE. Both have this kind of diamond plate checkered pattern on here that's supposed to help with print sticking. I found that to be mostly true. I've had less print failures with this new diamond plate, although I still am going to recommend something like a flex plate because over time you can mess this up, but a flex plate, you're probably not going to mess that up. You can just flex it and things pop off. It'd be nice if the industry eventually realized that and started shipping them with the plates, but here we are. Now, when we turn this sideways, what we don't see are like latches to lock or things to unscrew. Well, I mean, obviously you can unscrew these, but that's not how this thing levels. These auto level. I'm excited for that. That's going to be interesting because that's going to take probably the largest part of failure out of 3D printing. If this works as advertised, this could be a game changer. And honestly, it would blow every other printer out of the water. So I'm excited to try this out. It's a bit cumbersome, but if it works, I don't care. So for latching, it slides on very similar to the Jupiter LE. It's got kind of this dog bone pattern here that'll slide onto the plate when we open this up, and then there's a latch to lock it in place, and then you're done. So this will all be done in software. We'll have to take a closer look at that. Let's set this aside for now, and let's open up this case. Now I can see this case being very controversial in the printing community because now my printer needs this much more height to be able to get things in and out. So if you've built some sort of enclosure, this may be a problem for you. I don't know if anything's going to change with that. Maybe the next revision will allow you to remove them, but this is what we're going with now. It does mean that you have one less thing to mess with, but it does also mean that I'm going to stick a handle right there, so that way I can grab this and lift it without having to put my hands on the acrylic. That's just going to lead to a very messy acrylic. And remember my golden rule, it's always contaminated. Everything is always contaminated. So the second you start handling the acrylic is when you're going to start getting nasty fingerprints that you can't get off, or worse, you're going to get resin on this that you can't get off. So I don't know. The green is also a choice. I don't know how well that's going to keep out extraneous light coming from the outside. I'm not an expert in that sort of thing. The red seemed to work fine. The gray seemed to work fine. I imagine they did their homework on this, so I'll leave it to smarter people than me to figure that. Interestingly enough, the fill tray here has a spout now, a proper spout, so thanks for that. This is interesting. So these are not the knob style any longer. Instead, you actually have to use an Allen key to remove them. However, Elegoo was also kind enough to include the type of the knob. So you can throw those in and lock them down. Yes, the hood still closes. So I'm not quite sure why they're making that change, but I think I'll be leaving the ones on that I can spin out that quick. Moving the film from the printer, we can see that it has the same size screen as the Saturn IV Ultra. And we're kind of in the middle on the opacity with this. So that's gonna make for a nice echo with my audio. The FEP is kind of semi-opaque. Now we saw more of this on the Saturn III Ultra, and this is kind of in between the two. So I was surprised at how effective this was for printing, despite the opaque nature of it. It actually seemed to work really well. So what to believe now? This NFEP seems to be the way of the future. I did appreciate, as I said, that it has a proper drain spout here, but it also has one on this side, because you never really know quite what side you're going to end up on when you grab this thing when you're going to empty it. And of course you will have to empty it to change resin, so that's a nice add-on, and it's really just a quality of life item. So let's get this back on. Lock down these screws. And then let's take a closer look at the plate. All that's left, throw in some resin, load a file, print. So let's get this over to the lab. I'll show you the software, and then let's print something fun. Simply raise the latch and then slide the plate into position and lower the latch. With the Saturn IV Ultra, this is stationary, just like it has been for every other printer that Elegoo has made up to this point. The Saturn IV Ultra, on the other hand, this moves. So instead of this being stationary, you'll see that it moves up and down. I'm going to splice in some video that you can see right now. As you can see, the tray moves up and down, as well as the plate moving up and down. So the plate simply moves up to get the item out of the resin, and the tray pulls it away from the print, allowing it to supposedly release in an easier fashion with less chance of separation of layers. I don't have an Ultra yet to test, but I have to believe that that's true. Otherwise, it'd be kind of crazy to release it and say that it does. Either way, that's a pretty big change for the Elegoo platform, and it could be a game changer. We'll have to test that out when we get our own Ultra in-house. The other difference actually is back here. So there's a small platform right here, and on the Ultra there is a camera. That camera allows you to do the time-lapse photography that I normally use an external camera for, but it does it right within the device itself, allowing you to keep an eye on your prints and also make cool videos like the ones that we make here. It also has some AI scanning capabilities that this one does not have, allowing it to keep an eye on your print, throw an alarm if there's an issue, or even stop the print if there's an issue that would cause it to fail. So again, we'll have to test these things for ourselves when we get an Ultra in-house, But those are things that are justifying the difference between the two devices, which is roughly $100. I do want to point something out before we get started. I'm going to go back into the settings and go into information. Nope, not information. I'm going to go into... All right, 3, 2, 1. Before I get started, I want to go into tools and I want to show you something. I'm going to go into the device self-test. You can see that I've used 1,000 releases of film, which is what we did with the print that we just finished. So that is a running count of how many times you've pulled free of the FEP, and kind of a running count of how long your consumables are gonna last. Now that we've got some resin loaded, let's go ahead and fire it up and watch it go through the post. So you see here Saturn 4, as expected. And we have a post test here. Release film usage count, that's gonna tell me generally how many times this thing's pulled away from the film. So that'll give me an idea of how long I have left on that film. Settings and information, that's going to tell me the OS revision as well as the firmware revision, and I can turn off the sound if I'm so inclined. Under language, we have Chinese or English. We don't want to switch to Chinese. Service is going to give me a list of all the different ways I can contact Elegoo, which I have had great luck working with them. Before I was working with them as press, I had an opportunity to work with them and had no problems whatsoever. Top marks. Under tools, I think I have manual calibration here. I don't think I'd like to do that. This thing's supposed to self-level, so tank cleaning, that's gonna run a completely square run of the light and give you a nice flat surface that you can peel out for cleaning. Calibration is gonna go to the screen that we saw before. Device self-test is the post that we did. So we're gonna jump right to print. So slicing software, Voxel Dance Tango, printing test, Cheetahbox. These are the softwares that are included. We're just gonna go jump right to the rook.goo. And then this Elegoo chess here, I believe, yeah. So this .goo file is a relatively new standard. It's gonna take 3 hours and 37 minutes, and it's gonna be 1,000 layers. Now we're just gonna hit go, and then I'm gonna jump this up so we can get a good look at the printer in motion. The mechanical sensors being calibrated, do not touch the device. Well, I wouldn't want to. Automatic detection for resin in the vat. We see the plate lowering. Move up here, we can clearly see. And if things work correctly, this will self-level and start to print. All right, slowing down as it gets closer to the resin. Now I've done no calibration whatsoever. So this is right out of the box and print, just like advertised. Fingers crossed. Oh, moving quick now. Okay, it says auto leveling down here on the screen. Still says auto leveling. And now it's printing the first layer. If that was uneventful, I think that's by design. So we're printing the first layer. I'm gonna go ahead and switch cameras to my time-lapse photography one. That is one thing that this particular version does not have. The Ultra does have a camera built right into it, so it can watch your prints for you and show you that time-lapse that we all like to see. For this, I'm just gonna have to pull out my Canon and aim it at it and let it do its thing. Well, that's certainly the proof. Without any setting changes whatsoever, I was able to print that rook without a problem. We pull this off, and it's going to help me point out the very first problem that I see between this and the Ultra. You saw how I had to get that out. Because the resin does pool on the top of the plate, you have to kind of gymnastics it around the corner here or pull it off completely to let the resin drip out. So that's going to be problematic. You're probably going to have some messes down here. The Ultra version has a tray that kind of extends around here to prevent that from happening. So that's going to be the first major advantage for the Ultra over this particular plate and resin tray design. The other advantage has to do with this part and how it articulates. Yes, I said articulates. Now you might be wondering if this plate can fit in the mercury washing cure. And the answer is actually no, and you wouldn't want it to. For one, it'll get stuck in this part of the neck, so it simply would not go further than that. And as I said, you wouldn't want it to. The top part of the plate here is actually hollow. So if you were to get it inside, well, it'd simply fill up with resin and with isopropyl alcohol, and then you'll end up having to drain it all out. This, I'm guessing, is filled with magic, so you probably don't want to have that magic spill out. Even when it goes inside the resin, you'll notice that there is no resin on top of the print plate. That box on top does not actually submerge in the resin. It's simply this portion of the plate. Sorry for the plastic in the way. Obviously, for me to talk, I have to have that lid closed, or you get to hear me muffled through my my mask. So best I can do. But yep, this will not fit, nor would you want it to. I've gotten the print off the plate, but wow, did that take a lot of force to do. You can see I kind of messed up the edge here, at least on those bottom layers. Nothing that you can't fix with some wood putty or some sanding. But yeah, that was really difficult to get off the plate. I could see how a release plate, like a magnetic plate, would make that much easier. And I do highly suggest that those come at a... Our next print is a little more complicated. It is an Anubis, and you cannot tell from that at all. So I'll be interested to see how it goes, but that is a 12.5-hour print at 4,379 layers. Again, I've done nothing to prepare this. It's simply print and go, and we'll see how it goes. Calibration's occurring. Automatic detection of the resin. Might need to add a little more for this. We'll see. You can see that it's detecting the bed at 21C. And you'll see that come up over time. See the bed pause right before it hits the resin, lowers down in. It still reads automatic detection for resin in the vat on the screen. Now I don't know if it actually is determining if it's going to have enough for the print or not. I'm not precisely sure what it's detecting. But at this point, we're back to auto leveling. Again, I've made no adjustments whatsoever, so this is all automatic, hands off. That's it. The screen now says print, and we're on that first layer. So see ya in 12.5 hours. Coming in at 13 hours and 46 minutes. Complete success. Let's get this thing out, cleaned, and get a closer look before we take one more print that's going to use the entire plate. And right at 10 hours and 20 minutes. We have a full plate print. This is going to be part of a Kane print from Legacy of Kane. So I just need to reset the plate, and then I'll be able to print the base for everything to go on. So let's do that. As you can see, everything came out perfect, at least as far as I can tell. We'll know more when we get everything released from the supports, but looking pretty snazzy. With everything off the plate and rinsed, now we're going to let it sit for about 24 hours, especially if you've got things that are hollow. This gives a chance for it to vent off any VOCs. And what I've found is, especially when you have things like this where it's wet, if I can get those things toweled off and dried off and then let them sit for about a day, when I do cure it, I will end up with far less mess on the print itself, and it'll hold paint much better in the long run. After using it for a couple of weeks, I am incredibly impressed with the Elegoo Saturn 4. Even this non-ultra version has enough features in it that makes it miles ahead of anything else that Elegoo has released, and probably their competitors as well. The auto leveling is a game changer. Almost every print failure that I've ever had, and almost everyone that I see on Reddit or anywhere else, comes from bed leveling. Well, when it's done for you, and it's done every time, and it seems to be perfect every time, I have yet to have a failure. I've tried. I have really tried. I've given it badly supported models. I've given it models that are too heavy. I've given it models that have obvious suction points in them. I've poorly supported it. I've given it entirely too many objects on the plate and overbuilt the plate. Nothing has stopped this thing from printing. Everything has come out with one exception, and it wasn't even the printer's fault. There is a resume function on the printer, and I've not really had the occasion to use it. Well, thanks to Texas and our terrible power grid, we had a power outage during the printing of this model. And as you'll see when I get a close-up here, there's a split underneath her elbow and there's a flat spot underneath her chin. Both of those are very repairable, or I can simply reprint it. Given that all I had to do to print it in the first place was load the model on the USB and hit print, I don't know, maybe it's not even worth the effort to print it anymore. I can just reprint it and call it a day. One of the last stops that we always make is warranty and price. Now, just about every manufacturer, including this one, has settled into a 1-year warranty, and the Saturn 4 is no exception. So 1-year warranty. But the pricing is actually another big story. The Saturn 3 and the Saturn 3 Ultra are actually more expensive than the Saturn 4 and Saturn 4 Ultra. The Saturn 4 Standard comes in at $299, and the Saturn 4 Ultra comes in at $399. So again, significantly cheaper than the Saturn 3 and Saturn 3 Ultra, despite having all of these advancements, including the automatic bed leveling. So then the question becomes, well, what's the difference? The Saturn 3, Saturn 3 Ultra, Saturn 4, and Saturn 4 Ultra all have the exact same build plate size. The only difference is that both of the 4 models are roughly 30 millimeters shorter than both of the 3 models. Now that only really comes into play when you're building large volume items like this. But at that point, just take the item that you're printing and scale it accordingly. If you really absolutely have to have a larger build plate, well, then check out my review for the Jupiter LE on this channel, and you'll get all the plate size you need, and you'll also get to figure out all of the challenges with leveling it. When you combine all of this, it's very easy to recommend the Saturn 4. Even the non-Ultra version has so many features that make this the easiest printer I have ever used. And at this point, I have close to a dozen printers. So I have a lot of basis for comparison, but none of them have ever been this easy to set up and use straight out of the box. So if you're just now considering getting into 3D printing, save yourself a lot of headache. Pick up a Saturn 4, even if you don't get the Ultra version. Pick up a Saturn 4 and just enjoy getting to print really cool stuff right out of the box without all the headaches. I'm Ron Burke, editor-in-chief for Gamingtrend.com. Stay safe, and we'll see you again very soon.